Hello there, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I want to wish you a very happy day, first of all. But I really, first of all, I want to, before wishing everybody a happy holidays, and whatever holiday you are celebrating at this time of year, so many different cultures, so many different religions, so many different philosophies. I mean, even some ancient, paganism. It all revolves around this time of year. It's a special time of year, right? And that's why, again, many different cultures, religions, societies, philosophies celebrate their really big days in this time, and then also in the springtime, right? Because this is where the world kind of goes to sleep, and the springtime is when the world wakes up. It's the reason why so many of these religion narratives take place around this time of year. And so I want to recognize that. First of all, I want to recognize that not everyone celebrates Christmas, okay? And for all of you who do not celebrate Christmas and also live in the United States, I want to hold a little compassion for you. And I've held you in the empathy of my heart over the last few days because and I encourage all of all other Christians out there, I encourage you to take a look at this in an objective and open-minded way, right? Because just imagine and put yourself in the perspective of someone who doesn't celebrate Christmas or practice Christianity, right? Imagine what yesterday is like for somebody who doesn't, right? I mean, really, the world basically shuts down. At least in America, it does, right? I haven't traveled that much on Christmas Day to know outside of America, but here, I mean, you can't go to a bank, you can't go to a post office, you can't go to almost every supermarket is going to be closed all day long. You can usually find a gas station, get yourself a quart of milk if you're desperate, or a dozen eggs, but it's certainly not the same quality that you're accustomed to. And this I imagine must be a little difficult for some people, the way that the world just shuts down. And so I want to hold this, I want to take a moment and honor anyone who's struggling with that, okay? And for all of you who are not struggling with that, but had a holiday yesterday, and maybe you were with a lot of people, maybe you were with a lot of friends and family, maybe you were with maybe you were with a very small group of family, or maybe you were completely alone. Whatever the case, number one, I want you to know, because you're in my tribe, I was holding you in my heart all day, and I continue to hold you in my heart. And I hope that you had a great time, whatever it is you were doing. I hope that it was wonderful. But I want to talk to those of you for whom maybe it wasn't so wonderful. All right. But before we get into that, I just remembered, I got to tell you about this shirt I'm wearing, right? So for all of you on the podcast, you don't see this amazing rad shirt that my wife and kids got me. It's a tie-dye dress shirt. And I'm going to try to turn around here real briefly and see if I could show you the back of this thing. Yeah. This is just making me so happy. I wore it all day yesterday. I'm wearing it today again because I'm just so excited. And I want to show my family how much I really appreciate this gift, And the thing, and believe me, I don't get much, I mean, I'm pretty much the workhorse when it comes to Christmas. Like, I do it for everyone else. And so when somebody buys me something like this, which is, I mean, it's a shirt. It's a tie-dye shirt. It's not like, it is what it is. It's not a huge significant purchase or something like this. I got this and I got a plant. All right. And my daughter got me this most beautiful journal, right? So it's a Pisces journal. I'm a Pisces. My daughter's really into the whole astrology, but it's an unruled journal. So, oh man, I'm so looking forward to filling that baby up. So it's very little things. And but the thing that I really love that, about these little tiny gifts that I receive from my family, and they're huge because they come from their heart, right? But what's really important about it is that they're me, right? Like they're really, they're giving me the things that really matter to me. Right. And my daughter bought that book for me before Halloween. That's how much she's been like, my dad loves journals and I found the great journal for him, so I think that is really, at the core of what this whole thing's really all about. It's about those little tiny feelings, those little tiny emotions that we can feel around this whole big holiday thing, And that really is reflective of the way that we talk about life here on the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel, right? Like what I tell you all the time is that, life is not a big holiday, right? Life is not measured in weeks or 40 days until Christmas shopping kind of thing. Life is not measured even in days. Life is not measured even in hours. Life, or we can measure it any way we want to, right? I mean, you can measure it in whatever, that's up to you, right? But I shouldn't say that life isn't measured in these things. But life doesn't happen in those ways, right? Life doesn't happen week by week, year by year, month by month, quarter by quarter, hour by hour, even minute by minute, even second by second is not really an accurate reflection of what life is really doing, right? Life happens now. Life is unfolding in this present moment. Right? And so life in all its grandiosity, in all its hugeness, life is really tiny. It's a very small, tiny thing in the sense of what it actually is, like as it's happening, right? But of course, our own autobiographical sort of sense of things, it shifts the perspective and it makes it seem as though life is more of this big, complicated thing. And look, I'm not saying that life isn't complicated. It can be. I personally believe that one of the most, advantageous things we can do is simplify life. That's a different story. That's my opinion. Right? There are many people out there living very complicated lives who are extraordinarily happy and extraordinarily healthy. So who are we to say that that is wrong? It's not. It's what's right for them. Right. So for me, a simplified life is more advantageous for me. Right. But some people wouldn't enjoy a holiday that wasn't filled with the mayhem and the chaos. Right. And if that truly is how you feel about it, if you truly are happy with that, well, then, yeah, go for it. Right. But that's the question. Are you truly happy with that? Or are you simply going along because that's the way it's supposed to be, right? And that's what I want to discuss today with you. And I want to give you a little challenge, a little assignment, if you will, okay? And this is really mostly for people who are, maybe struggling at this time of year, but it could be for anyone, right? Like really, this is about kind of, coming back to who we are, right? And, I talk a lot about authenticity, and I'm going to be doing a lot of work about authenticity in the weeks and months ahead. And I really do have you all to thank for this sort of momentum, this sort of wellspring of activity around authenticity, because it is you, the listener, the viewer, who allow me to be authentic and has allowed me to explore this and to, sort of recognize things about authenticity so that I can now tell you about it, right? And so I mentioned the tie-dye shirt, right? Like one of the things that my wife said to me, I think I mentioned this to you all a few weeks ago. We were talking about, I've mentioned before that I had this really difficult career, right, with my father. And my father was always like telling me, like, no, you have to like dress like a Republican. I mean, he didn't say those words, but basically like that's what it was. Like, here's the clothes that you should be wearing when you go to, see clients and stuff like that, and like almost like this is the way it works, right? being a young person who was traumatized and confused and mostly drunk and high, I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to, I didn't know any better. I didn't know any different. And so I believed it and I went for it. And I basically destroyed myself trying to be something that I wasn't. And something my wife said to me not too long ago is that, and this is such an ironic thing that maybe my father will listen to this someday and understand something about it, although I think it might be too late for that, but which is fine. It doesn't matter. But, had he, and this is what my wife said, and my wife's known me for 30 years now, 20 years now. She said if your dad had allowed you to be a salesman with like tie-dye, dress shirts and long hair and being who you are, you probably would have been more successful in that career. So the very thing that my father was, like antagonizing me to do, had he allowed me to do it in a way that was me, irony has it that today we'd be looking back at a completely different, 25, 30 years now, which is really just baffling, right? That we feel that there's only one way to do things, and that's really not his fault, right? Like it's not your fault if you're going through the holidays, and again we're coming back to the holidays. Sorry for the digression, but it's not your fault either, any more than it was my father's fault for pushing me into a place of inauthenticity. It's not your fault for, kind of propagating this inauthenticity by just doing what is supposed to be, right? It's not any of our fault, right? Because it's all derived from conditioning, right? Like you didn't just come into the world, in April of this past year and say, okay, I'm going to invent everything that happens in the holidays, right? I mean, you've been conditioned your whole life to experience the holidays in the way that you experience the holidays, right? The only difference is, new people come in terms of children being born or spouses entering the family dynamic, and other people leave because they get old and they get sick and they pass on, right? But otherwise, it's like, hey, this is what the holidays are, right? And so the last few years I have spent, and again, I'm going to tell you a little personal information here, only in the service of hoping that if you hear my personal story, maybe that'll resonate somehow with you, and maybe my story will help you to create a new story of your own, right? And so what I mean by that is that for the last like 3 or 4 or 5 Christmases now, my family has been sort of deconstructing Christmas, right? We've been sort of, getting past this like, okay, what's supposed to happen? Now, of course, we moved to Colorado 5 years ago, so that was certainly the first step, right? Because now it's not even possible for us to go to visit our family. And that I was not a conscious part of the decision, but I think it was definitely part of the decision, right? To be free from that, right? Because believe me, I mean, I used to, for the first, like, when my wife and I were dating and before we got married and stuff, we would go to her family on Friday night, right? Be eating and drinking and then get in the car and drive 3 hours to go to my parents' so that we could wake up on Christmas morning at my parents' house. It was madness. It was madness. And then finally, like, we got a dog, so we started like just going out on Christmas morning, like 10, 11 o'clock or something like that, right? But the unconsciousness of my family was like, no, you gotta be here. But it's like, no, we don't really have to be here. Like, there's no real, honest reason for that, right? It's just because the way it's always been, right? And so I'm asking you now, and this is especially true for those of you who maybe have struggled through this process, right? I'm sorry, I digressed again, but one of the things that my family is doing, again, as part of my digression, one of my things my family's been doing is deconstructing this whole Christmas holiday over the years. So over the last 5 years, we've shed, again, not going to my parents' house, not going to my wife's parents' house, And then we started looking at things like, okay, what's the deal with the meal? Like, can we change anything with that? Can we let go of any, constricting views of anything around the meal? Or what about the rest of the activities during the day, right? Because what we found ourselves doing, right, is like, oh man, we're failing Christmas. Like, we got to do better here. It's not okay that our kids don't want to, go out and take a beautiful hike on Christmas. Because that's what we decided. Oh, that'll be the good Christmas thing to do, right? And all that was coming from this place of feeling as though there was something that needed to be done, that there was some, right way to do things, which means that there's a wrong way to do things too, right? And I can't even take credit for this being even a conscious process of deconstructing Christmas. It really hasn't been that conscious until this year. This year we kind of realized, like, wow, all the steps we've taken have gotten us to a place now. So like in this year, the culmination has been, we really didn't spend very much money at all. The last few years have been struggle for money, but this year we did it without any guilt, right? It was just like, okay, well, this is what we have. Each kid got like one, big major thing that was expensive, and then just a bunch of little stuff. But you know what? Like the coffee cups, like I got everybody a coffee cup, and the way everybody loves their coffee cups is like amazing, right? Like I got this little shirt and a little journal, and I got my wife a couple of books. Like, it was amazing, right? And what was the most amazing part of it is that it was us, right? We did it our way. Finally, we finally got to the point. Well, the last step for me, and this is something that's, you've all been part of this process and my trauma and everything, but I didn't even call my parents this year on Christmas. And that might sound mean, and that might sound like vindictive or something, but it's not, okay? It's really, really not. It was a matter of self-preservation, right? And my wife and I talked about it last night. I mean, in the past, like, even like a week before Christmas, I would be getting into this tense and irritable mood, and I'd be, and it was all about having to experience my parents again. Right? Now, again, this is how trauma works, right? It's not something that was a conscious thing I was thinking, like, oh gosh, I got to talk to my parents on, on 5 days from now. Oh man, 4 days from now, 3 days, and getting tighter and tighter, right? It was all just implicitly happening in my body, because my body remembers that, oh crap, we're going to go and see these people who have been so terrible to us our whole lives, and they're going to ply us with gifts to make it seem like love. And so when I was able to finally this year, and I told you all a few weeks ago that I actually, I think I told you anyway, that I actually, confronted my father and told him, I need you to not call me. I need you to not reach out to me. I need to be separate from you. And again, it's not something that's vindictive. I didn't say it in a mean way. I didn't say it to try to hurt him. And I imagine there's some tears being shed by my parents. Maybe those are tears of guilt and shame for what they created here, or maybe it's just confused tears and shame, tears of feeling that I'm doing something mean, but I'm not. And so one of the things that occurred to me yesterday was that this I feel a little guilty about that. It's impossible not to feel guilty about that. I mean, they're my parents after all, and then all through the abuse and all through the neglect and all through the, the threat of abandonment, in a really weird and hard to understand way, there was still love. And I think there's always been love. And to a certain degree, there's love going back to them too, right? So there's always, like, they are me and I am them, right? So we can't, that doesn't go away necessarily, right? So there's still a guilt there, and there's still maybe even a shame and a sadness over that. But, and I wrote this in my little blue journal last night. That's the desk journal. This is the pocket journal. That's how I roll. And I'll read to you what I wrote. That really simple, but the guilt of not seeing or calling my parents is far less difficult and painful than the trauma response from seeing. Is much more painful than the trauma response seeing, calling them triggers in me. In other words, yeah, it was hard. There were moments where it was like, oh man, I feel like a bad person somehow, But that feeling, that little fleeting moment of like, ooh, feeling was nothing. I mean, like I just told you, it used to be for like a week or more. It would just literally take my life away. It would literally rule my life, and I would be irritable, and I would be angry, and I'd be snapping at people, and I'd be just a ball of stress. And this happens on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, on my birthday, on any of my parents' or siblings' birthdays. It's a lot of times a year, for me to be feeling that way. But there's the thing, I never even knew that this was going on. Right? Like, I didn't know. I mean, I knew, it was because my parents, I don't like it. There was something, of course, there that was understood, but it wasn't understood to the clarity with which I'm talking now. And that's what I'm here to tell you about today. Pardon me for that pause. All of you on the podcast probably like, what happened? I was drinking a glass of water. I brush my teeth before every episode. It's a thing, okay? And, almost. There's certain times I haven't done it. It's like, oh, man, I forgot to brush my teeth like halfway through the thing. I don't stop and brush my teeth and go over it again. I'm not that, compulsive about things. but I do brush my teeth before every episode just because it gives me like a little kind of sense of confidence. I know there's not like a piece of spinach on my teeth that I can't see or something that I won't see until somebody comments on it on YouTube or whatever. But sometimes that leaves with a little, a little toothpaste kind of mouth. So I needed a little water. So pardon me for that. But here's the thing, right? Again, we don't know, I didn't know any of this was happening, right? I didn't know that we needed to deconstruct Christmas the way we did. But again, this last step of like Christmas no longer includes this phone call or this FaceTime experience with my family back in New York. It no longer includes that. That is no longer part of the whole thing. And that final step was the last thing that my wife said to me yesterday several times. And I said it to her. This is the best Christmas we've ever had, right? We're totally isolated. We didn't have any money to do anything. We didn't have, we live in not a great place, it was nice weather, I guess, but there wasn't a whole lot going for us. But yet it was the best yet. And I truly believe that's because it was the most authentic yet, right? There was a point at which we were wrapping presents. My daughter got she's like, I don't want to open presents in front of everybody. Now, 2-3 years ago, it would have been like, but you have to, right? That's what we do on Christmas. So open your darn presents. And it would have been a whole thing, right? And that's the kind of thing that escalates into really negative stuff, right? But yesterday, okay, you don't have to do anything. You can leave them there until, I'm going to take the tree down next week, but you can leave those wrapped presents there as long as you want on the floor. That I will never bother you about it. And so we allowed our son to open all his presents, and he was, he's the kind of guy who just rips through everything and just can't wait to play with it. She's the kind of person who, takes her time and goes through it. And that's the thing. It wasn't authentic for her. So we got my son all done and got him upstairs, hooked up his little VR headset that he got, and he's online with his friend in 2 seconds. And then my daughter started opening her presents quietly with no expectations, no, scrutiny from anybody else. We just allowed her to be her. And we just allowed my son to be my son. It didn't have to be this, okay, and that's how it also was in the past, that, okay, my son opens one present, then my daughter, and then my son, then my daughter. We got to alternate. We got to keep it fair, keep it even, right? That's BS. Who cares? She doesn't care. And he just wants to get his stuff open, so let it happen. Let it flow. Let it be authentic. So now I'm not here to tell you like, hey, let your kids not open their presents or whatever. I mean, I don't know what authenticity looks like to your family. But what I do know is that you can find that authenticity and you can identify whether that authenticity is there or not, right? And one of and of course, mindfulness and self-compassion are the way, right? I mean, that's, I'm sure that's not surprising to you, right? That as we allow ourselves to come into ourselves, as we allow ourselves to quiet the busyness of what's supposed to be, the expectations, the stress that comes from all of that, right? When we let go of that, we quiet all that down, that's when we start noticing things, right? And a lot of times we're going to notice it in our bodies, right? We're going to notice like, okay, this is what authenticity feels like. This is what inauthenticity feels like, right? Like a lot of times that's the way that we can get there, right? And so mindfulness and self-compassion, especially the way that I coach it, is a great way to sort of, find that authenticity. But another really, really, really helpful practice to help to do this is through journaling. And I recommend taking some time over the next couple of days because it's still really fresh. Okay. What happened over the last couple of days is still very fresh in your mind and in your memory. So if you were to take, say, 5 minutes tonight, 5 minutes tomorrow, 5 minutes the day after, and maybe 5 minutes the day after that, I'm talking about 20 minutes total over the next 4 days. Folks, that's attainable. Okay. And if it can't be 20 minutes, let it be 10 minutes across those times. So 2.5 minutes each time. But here's what I'm recommending you do, right? When we journal, right? When we write down what's going on, right? There's two really important things that happen in that process, right? Number one, we're writing just to ourselves, right? So we really allow ourselves to just get that raw data just dumped out of our brain, right? And that's helpful in and of itself because a lot of times that data just rattles around and recirculates and just becomes noisy, right? So letting it out is a very positive thing in and of itself, right? But as I've mentioned here before, as you as you reflect autobiographically on what's gone on over the last few days, right? You're using the right hemisphere of your brain predominantly. Okay. But as soon as you take those memories and you put them into a linear order, you label them with, definitions, you list them in a logical way. You notice I'm using all L's here, right? Because that's something my left brain loves too, right? But all of those functions, the linearity, the organization, the temporal sort of organization, right? Putting things from beginning, middle, end, right? Instead of a lot of times when we autobiographically think of something, we might think of the end and then something in the beginning and then something in the middle and then it's the end again. It bounces all over the place. So the left half of the brain is the one that predominantly puts that all in order, right? So by journaling, you're doing both. And as you do both, you're creating a really important integration. And through that integration, that's where you start finding that, wait a second, I'm making that fruitcake for no other reason than that's what my mother told me that my grandmother did, every year. Nobody likes the darn fruitcake. I don't have to keep making it, Or maybe people love the fruitcake, so you want to keep making it. That's the thing, right? Let's try to find those parts of us that are authentic in this process. Because I promise you, that the parts that are not authentic, those are the ones that are giving you the most stress. I promise you that. All right, if you'd like to talk about this more, please, 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 I'm going to put a link below that you can use to schedule an appointment. Okay? 45 minutes on me. It's already paid for. Your name's already on it. And we can talk about this. We can talk about this. We can talk about a lot of things, right? We can talk about what coaching looks like. And we could also talk about what, I could give you a couple of books to read if you don't want to do the coaching, right? This is all very open. We're going to be authentic about it. But the first step is just booking that call. All right? Now, last announcement. I have no idea how much time I've been on here. I haven't been doing the timer. Oh yeah, I think we're close. I think we're just about 30 minutes now. So anyway, really quick, I'm thinking about doing a webinar later this week, probably like Friday, maybe Thursday, about New Year's resolutions. So could you email me if you're interested in a little, say, an hour-long talk about how mindfulness and self-compassion specifically can assist in the process of setting New Year's resolutions? Okay, because I would love to do that. I would love to help you with that. All right, so let me know if you're interested. All right, everybody. Wishing you well. Hope you have a great day. Take care.